When their romance crumbled and Evelyn grasped that there was no going back, she wept bitterly. Finding such a perfect partner in the bedroom was no small feat. The subject was sensitive and not everyone's cup of tea. She was most distressed by the prospect that her future partner might not measure up. And as fate would have it, her next boyfriend, Lucas, who eventually became her husband, after giving it a single go, outright refused to partake in such activities. Evelyn moped around for a week, but eventually came to terms with his stance. Her love for Lucas was too profound to toss away over such trivial matters. When their romance broke up and Evelyn realized that there was no turning back, she cried bitterly. Finding such an ideal partner in bed was not an easy task. The topic was sensitive and not to everyone's taste. Most of all, she was upset by the prospect that her future partner might not meet her expectations, and by the will of fate, her next boyfriend, Lucas, who eventually became her husband, flatly refused to participate in such events after the first attempt. Evelyn moped for a week, but eventually came to terms with his position. Her love for Lucas was too deep to give up on her over such trifles. Desperately, Evelyn kept her lips sealed about this to her husband. She adored Lucas and aimed to meet all his whims without question. She had no intention of letting her personal issues rock the boat in their relationship. In desperation, Evelyn kept her mouth shut, telling her husband about it. She adored Lucas and sought to unconditionally fulfill all his whims. She wasn't going to let her personal problems rock the boat in their relationship. It all started with a simple text message. The guy logged into her underground account. He introduced himself to Henry and mentioned that he had come across her in one of the groups where she communicated with people who shared her interests. He immediately stated his wishes. He was looking for a woman who would agree to obey him online, but at the same time left the door open for a possible face-to-face meeting. Evelyn felt awkward and stopped contacting her for a few days. Two sides were fighting in her. One was urging her to answer, and the other was begging her not to pay attention to them. 3 days later, Henry received a message in which his request was granted. Evelyn was trembling with anticipation as she sent it, a strange smile playing on her lips. She hadn't experienced anything like this since her ex-boyfriend first introduced her to this intriguing world. Lucas, too, noticed a shift in his wife's demeanor. She had become inexplicably softer, seemingly insatiable for affection, closeness, and interaction. It thrilled him to see her transformed so, and he relished every moment they shared intimately. Yet Lucas remained blissfully unaware that during their most intimate moments, Evelyn was mentally entwined with another, engaging in entirely different escapades. This covert affair with Henry stretched over several months, culminating in Henry's persistent suggestions for them to meet in person. This secret affair with Henry lasted for several months, culminating in Henry's insistent offers to meet in person. Evelyn was overcome with fear because it was one thing to conduct playful correspondence, fulfill some requests, and share photos, but it was quite another to meet face to face. She had never intended to cheat on her husband, and the thought of it deeply disturbed her. All this time, Evelyn hoped that her interlocutor would forget about their desire to meet, but these hopes were in vain. Henry began to pressure her, using his persuasion tactics to get her to agree to a meeting. Stunned, Evelyn interrupted their online chats. She needed time to think about her predicament. Every passing day seemed like an eternity to her. She was torn between two contradictory options and could not decide which path to choose. In the end, she made a decision, justifying it by reminding herself that this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity and it would be foolish to miss it. Evelyn outlined her thoughts in Henry's message, explaining her choice. However, after reading her words, the potential lover suddenly stopped all contact. Alarmed and confused, Evelyn received a short message consisting of just a few words. "You're acting like a fool," jumping back and forth. What happened next was etched in her memory for a long time, sending chills down her spine. When Lucas initially received a notification from an unknown individual on a social media platform, he dismissed it without much thought. However, after receiving several evidently personal photos of his wife, Lucas felt compelled to consider the stranger's words. Struck profoundly by the revelations, he couldn't easily shake off his astonishment. He was baffled by the thought of his usually affectionate and gentle wife engaging in such actions, especially since there had been no signs of unfaithfulness or discontent in their marriage before. When Lucas first received a notification from an unknown person on a social network, he rejected it without hesitation. However, after receiving several obviously personal photos of his wife, Lucas felt the need to reflect on the stranger's words. Deeply affected by the revelations, he could not help but be amazed. He was baffled by the thought that his usually loving and gentle wife would commit such acts, especially since there had been no signs of infidelity or discontent in their marriage before. Once, in the early days of their union, Lucas had denied her the intimacy she valued so much. Could this refusal have been so decisive? At first, Lucas blamed himself for this, convinced that his refusal had led his wife into the arms of another. However, he soon came to the harsh realization that her betrayal was a deliberate decision, and she alone was responsible for it. That evening, their usual calm was disrupted by a storm of recriminations. Never before in their entire history together had they entered into such a fierce conflict. Indeed, they had never had to face such a serious problem before. Lucas reproached his wife for having an affair, but could hardly realize the reality of betrayal. It seemed to him that at any moment he could wake up and find that the whole ordeal was a nightmare figment of his imagination. He adored Evelyn, imagined a future with his daughter, and dreamed of a prosperous family life. However, these dreams were crumbling before his eyes with such evidence that he almost screamed in pain. Their divorce happened quickly, despite the fact that Evelyn tirelessly begged him for forgiveness. Lucas mustered all his fortitude to resist her pleas and sympathy. The couple had nothing to share. Evelyn took the kitchen appliances, and Lucas took the TV. That's all their common property. He was partly relieved that there weren't many ties left to break. He longed to erase this painful episode from his memory and vowed to avoid any contact with Evelyn in the future. She, for her part, was desperately trying to uncover the true identity of the man who introduced himself as Henry. Evelyn's own investigation of their past contacts came to nothing, prompting her to seek outside help. Her old friend was hacking personal accounts and pages from time to time. A few days later, he provided her with the login details, and when Evelyn read the name, she was speechless, and her face showed extreme shock. The distant disputes with this past acquaintance had slipped so far from Evelyn's mind that she had utterly dismissed the notion of him harboring any animosity. Yet, he achieved his dark aspiration. Her marriage crumbled. In her anguish, Evelyn drowned herself in her work, striving to barricade her thoughts against the ruins of her personal life. Each evening, she returned to her bleak, empty apartment. No warm greetings, no smiles waiting. There, her dinner companion was often a bottle of wine, and she wept aloud, lamenting how she had, by her own doing, dismantled her happiness. So goes the tale. Sound off in the comments with your thoughts on this scenario and the actions of those involved. Thanks for bearing with us till the end. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button on the Story For You channel. Take care.